Hello and welcome to our webinar, How Businesses Are Navigating the Transition to Cloud Computing. I'm Michael Flavin, Senior Product Marketing Manager with eFax Corporate, part of J2 Cloud Services, and I'll be your host and speaker today. Okay, so thank you again for joining us today. We'll cover our agenda briefly. So for our agenda, we'll discuss how businesses are leveraging cloud computing today and how the consumption model for cloud computing has evolved. We'll also discuss some common misconceptions out there that can be an inhibitor for businesses or enterprises to adapt cloud computing or services that are available for them. We'll talk about cyber risk inherent in various industries specific to fax systems that are dated. They too can expose your business to cyber risk. And then we'll talk about how to sunset some of those older fax systems with no downtime. So a real easy, quick win for a lot of businesses as far as the IT migration to the cloud. And then finally, we'll talk about how that migration can improve efficiency of businesses and then really be a shot in the arm for compliance and privacy and protection of business-critical information. And then we'll close with Q&A at the end. Little housekeeping, we always allot time for Q&A at the end of our webinar, but if you have a question at any point during the webinar, just go ahead and pop that question into the Q&A widget and it'll queue up, and we'll do our best to get to that question during the webinar, but if we don't, we will have someone from eFax Corporate reach out to you and address that question directly afterwards. Thank you. So IT organizations and companies of all types and sizes are already leveraging cloud computing and applications to conduct business. But are they doing this effectively? Are those migrations happening and causing chain reactions or problems post-migration? These applications that get moved to the cloud, are they being leveraged by a business in a cost-effective manner? Is it causing more maintenance for them? Is there risk of data loss with the provider that they're using? There's other issues that can occur. Are there also compliance issues once you move to a provider on the cloud? There's a lot of questions out there. So, but in understand the dynamic of those, let's first examine some of the ways businesses that can place a high value on data privacy are using the cloud today. And an example of that right off the bat is law firms. A lot of them are moving, for example, components of their infrastructure to the cloud, one piece at a time. Office 365 is one example of this. In fact, the American Bar Association has kind of come out publicly and given an endorsement for Office 365. You also see applications like ProLaw and others beginning to morph into cloud service offerings. In the financial services sector, financial services are using credit card processing on the cloud. They're using marketing and CRM vendors to host and manage their applications on the cloud. And their core banking applications, their core processors, the Fiservs of the world are cloud-based, for example. And next, an example would be in the manufacturing sector. A recent article from Forbes pointed out that there's been a revolution underway in manufacturing. This may be an extreme example, but virtually every component of the cloud of an infrastructure for manufacturing companies can be moved to the cloud. And manufacturing firms are finding economies of scale, increased productivity, and lower cost by moving these applications to the cloud. Certainly a company can have great success by doing this, again, by moving their CRM, their marketing, their analytics, and their procurement cloud, where they're leveraging cloud processing and then perhaps doing the analytics on site after they leverage that infrastructure. But how was this process accomplished? Did they just flip a switch and move everything to the cloud all at once, or how did this happen? Well, this is the issue. Many enterprises and businesses are realizing that more due diligence was needed before they moved important infrastructure to the cloud. So by moving to the cloud without doing the first steps that you need to do, the due diligence, the research and planning, businesses can set themselves up for failure. For example, did your business have the right bandwidth in place to support a cloud infrastructure? Remember, going from on-site or private cloud computing to off-site means that you'll have a lot of requests going to remote servers. And with that becomes higher demand on data going back and forth versus just hitting, for example, servers in a locally hosted server room. Also, a key consideration is the vendor you're working for or working with protecting your data, both in transit and at rest. And what we mean by that is if you have certain compliance or data privacy issues, say in healthcare, financial, or legal, are those measures that you would take internally to protect that data, that client data, that private PII, protected information? You would expect that vendor to do the same. And are they going to help you reach your compliance goals for audit, for compliance, for your consumer protection? And lastly, do they have a DR or disaster recovery plan in place? Can they recover from a site failure or loss of their primary site? You would want to know this if you did it internally. So these are the critical questions you would want to ask any cloud service provider you'd be working with potentially. Another mistake that businesses do, as I mentioned, is try to move everything all at once. A good way to do this is really start small with applications like faxing. We alluded to earlier, email is another one that a lot of businesses are doing with Office 365 on the cloud. It's an easier start than moving everything all at once, and then with any hiccups you might potentially incur, say bandwidth issues, or you're not getting the SLAs you need, you're mitigating that by only moving components at a time rather than your entire infrastructure to a hosted provider. And lastly, ignoring cloud geography. I mean, cloud is a fancy name for remote resources, servers, right, that your business would be leveraging. And so if that provider has a single location, there may be a lot of hops across the internet to get the data that they could potentially be hosting for you. Preferably, you'd have a provider with data centers across multiple regions, and if you're, let's say, an international law firm, an international manufacturing company, a finance company with multiple locations, you would want a provider that has those co-locations or footprints very close, or at least in the same regions, so that the response times can be very quick. All right, so along with some of the mistakes that businesses can make in migrating part or all of their infrastructure to the cloud, this can come in line with the process of incorrect notions about what cloud computing is and what it means for business. For example, misconceptions out there about cloud computing can talk about data not being secure on the cloud. Intuitively, this might make sense. Businesses or enterprises feel safer if they can have hands-on their data inside the corporate firewall, that it's kept physically close to them rather than stored off-site. But is on-site data safer than data stored in the cloud? Well, if you look at one of the leading legal journals for the law industry, Law Technology Today, has to say about cloud data storage. The fact is, a lot of service providers, their core business is about hosting and protecting highly confidential information, whether it's PII in the financial industry, client data that would fall under the model rule for the legal world, or PHI or ePHI, protected health information. Cloud providers' core mission and their reputation and their business, in fact, resides on this. And what Law Technology Today said that basically cloud-based services often have better security than some of the largest law firms and other entities can provide, because it is their core business, and they are constantly updating and dealing with cyber threats and cybersecurity as core to their business, as opposed to where a law firm is focused on the practice of law and not necessarily IT security as their core business. Another misconception for law firms, for example, in the same vein, they might assume that storing and transmitting information might violate the legal profession's model rule, which states that attorneys must keep client information confidential. But is this true if it's hosted off-site? Let's again to the analogy and with a hosted third-party provider. Law Technology Today weighed in a recent article entitled "Cloud Computing Security in Light of Recent Data Breaches." While they recognize the fact that there have been some very large data breaches in the news, they also point out that many states have spoken up on the matter, and they've allowed cloud computing for hosting sensitive, some of the most sensitive information. And then another misconception that's out there is that if you host it in the cloud, that will be a compliance issue along the same logic. But is that true? Does it make sense that a business would worry that data in a cloud application might fall short of compliance? Well, it's a legitimate concern, but is it true? Specific to the financial, under GLBA, federal regulations regarding the protection of PII or personally identifiable information doesn't really spell out the types of data storage or encryption methods that are required, only that the methods that are utilized to secure this data are those that can keep it secure. So, for example, the safeguards rule for protecting client information called for in Section 501 of Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. Let's listen into that. So it requires that institutions must implement protections to ensure the security and protection of customer records and information, to protect against any anticipated threats or hazards regarding the security or integrity of those records, and to protect against unauthorized access of those records, which could result in harm or inconvenience to any customer. So the question is, could this be accomplished with the right cloud app or data transmissions in place with the right provider? Absolutely it could. Just the right due diligence really needs to be there. Okay, let's transition to the cyber risk inherent with businesses today, specifically with older fax infrastructure, and how does that play into the risk that your business could be at with respect to data breaches. A recent survey, the ABA, American Bar Association, a tech survey, talked about how many firms, 14%, that they'd experienced a breach or theft this year. So clearly, everyone understands that data theft is a significant issue. It's in the news every month that another entity has been hacked and critical information has been stolen. So the legal, the healthcare, financial industry, all that gold mine, treasure trove of information that's warehoused is clearly a target of cyber hackers. In fact, a Wall Street Journal article recently interviewed and quoted Lori Hoffman, who's the CIO at law firm Goodwin and Proctor. And they mentioned that their external sites are hit several hundred times a week by bots, denial of service attacks, and other nefarious actors. And for them, this is the new normal, and it's warfare out there to protect and to keep personally identifiable information and other business transaction information confidential. When it comes to a business's fax processes, there's issues there as well. All of these data security and compliance issues come into play, and that's because most existing fax infrastructure models, whether it's on-site fax servers, desktop fax machines, or a combination of both, lack proper security and privacy controls. And to give you specific examples, many fax servers have issues with encrypting data, and we've seen IT professionals that say they can view a fax server in the same way they can view a shared server. So if proper security protocols such as encryption or access aren't set up, that can set up your organization or firm up for compliance or cyber hacking type issues. Also, fax servers can hit storage limits or have issues to where they need to be purged. And we've heard stories of where IT management or the office manager or director of operations, for example, has had to purge out monthly, weekly, hard copies of stored faxes so that they can free up space on that server. So certainly that could run into a compliance issue and a host of other problems as far as evidence and chain of custody. Desktop fax machines, very much the same. Talking to some law firms or financial entities where faxes come in, then a clerk or administrative person has to grab those and then route them via inter-office to that individual. Well, what information was seen by that person? Is it beyond the cover page? So those are also issues that are in-house that are managed, but they can run into issues with compliance and federal regulators. And also, we talked about the chain of command process. So is there a better way to take faxes, say for the inbound side, and route them directly to the intended recipient as opposed to having them print out in an area where they could potentially be viewed by the wrong person? These are all issues with dated fax infrastructure that can expose your business to unnecessary risk. So we've talked about some misconceptions and the different models that are out there, but now let's talk about how your organization can do an easy and small cloud migration project with one component, and that's easy. That's your electronic faxing, and this can be done with minimal downtime. Okay, so I want to share a real-world case study that we love to share about one of our existing clients, the Legal Aid Society of New York. Back in 2012, the Legal Aid Society had over 2,000 employees, and they handled, they're a nonprofit in New York State, and they manage litigation on the civil side and juvenile rights and things like that. And their caseload is heavy. They have thousands of cases that they help individuals and families with every year. So part of their business model and requirements is to send thousands of faxes back and forth to and from the courts. So they did that primarily by use of outbound faxes and inbound faxes that were hooked into a unified communication system. Well, their IT department, with all of these employees, one of their challenges was just keeping that infrastructure up and running, and then from an efficiency perspective, getting the right faxes to the right individuals. And they did have some service interruptions, so they started investigating a new solution. Well, this all came to a head in the fall of 2012 when Hurricane Sandy hit. you may recall, many of us recall, Hurricane Sandy wreaked absolute havoc on the East Coast, the northeastern seaboard, and unfortunately, the Legal Aid Society was down and their infrastructure was destroyed. They were down for months, so without faxes, business came to a screeching halt. So this was a real wake-up call for them and prompted a discussion. And the Legal Aid Society went with eFax Corporate. So as you can see from this slide, they reaped a lot of the benefits, starting with offsite servers and infrastructure. They really wanted to be able to not skip a beat and be down for their clients and for the civil services that they provide for months if something like this happens again. And so they were able to consolidate really all of this into one vendor and have high availability, but they also reduced cost, and the other great benefit was the ease of use. Employees really, the attorneys didn't need a lot of training. It's as easy as using an email for them. Correspondence is delivered to them directly, so any kind of compliance concerns and routing concerns they had of confidential information about each case that an attorney was managing were remedied through this. And then they, had the benefit as well as the powerful administrative tools that eFax Corporate offers for their team, as far as being able to easily search inbound and outbound faxes with a thumbnail screenshot or preview of each fax is a benefit to them as well, handling thousands of cases. So it was a big win for them, and we'll love to share that case study. And now they know that if there is a disaster, that they've got eFax Corporate as their vendor, and they're a cloud backup if anything goes wrong with their primary site. As long as they have internet connectivity, they can send and receive faxes, and their business can keep running. Okay, another great use case we like to share with everyone is also in the legal industry, but with a global corporate LLP law firm that had 19 locations and multiple servers and a lot of heavy infrastructure and capital outlay and IT overhead to manage that infrastructure. And their pain point was they had difficulty keeping fax documents confidential, and the routing, and then as far as auditing, they had challenges because of all the locations and the traceability of faxes and where they went. So by migrating to the cloud with eFax Corporate, they were able to consolidate to one vendor. Their IT management team loved the fact that they didn't have to do the hands-on work and of maintaining and upgrading and spending the resources on managing 19 locations across the world. And they had a partner who could deliver faxes worldwide securely, which was a big win for them. And that also enhanced their confidentiality and compliance. We mentioned the model rule earlier, which stipulates that firms have to take measures to keep clients' information confidential, as it should be. Another great use case is in the financial services industry. We have firms that do a lot of outbound faxing for loan approvals, and they were able to sunset the same infrastructure type footprint, the servers, the fax machines, the telco lines, and minimize their IT overhead by partnering with eFax Corporate. They also had a lot of complaints with clients who weren't receiving it, financial institutions, so that they could approve loans in a timely manner. And once they migrated to eFax Corporate, they loved the fact that they could receive fax confirmation receipts and kind of know where everything was at in the workflow process. And the added benefit there in their industry is with GLBA, we alluded to earlier in the webinar. They also send secure faxes with eFax Corporate as well. So a big win for them, and the IT team, management team really loved that project because it was done with minimal downtime. And then the last examples in the manufacturing sector. Earlier on in the webinar, we talked about the revolution that's occurring. This was an easy project for this firm. They have a very large facility, and they have multiple fax machines scattered about the plant. And so by consolidating this with eFax Corporate, each individual or distribution group would get the faxes on the inbound side. So it sped up their responsiveness, and they really liked that, rather than several hours delay, say, in getting a purchase order. That would come directly to the procurement manager, for example. So this saved time and resources for them. They no longer needed to have clerks specific to fax machines, routing them and searching for them and finding the owner of a fax. Now it goes directly to them. And they said that their responsiveness resulted in improved customer relationships. They were getting things and confirming them faster and turning orders around faster. All right, so we've talked about the cloud computing model and how some businesses are leveraging that model, and there's some misconceptions out there that may inhibit businesses from wanting to migrate to the cloud. We talked about some best practices in terms of some due diligence and maybe taking small steps and getting toes in the water rather than migrating your entire fax infrastructure at one time. And the fact that a cloud fax infrastructure move is something that can be done with no downtime and pretty simple from an IT perspective to execute on. But why eFax Corporate? We talked about some of the critical questions you might want to ask a cloud fax provider. But amongst those, when you arrive at moving your cloud fax infrastructure, your existing fax infrastructure, I should say, to a cloud fax model, why would you choose eFax Corporate versus another fax provider? Well, let's talk about that. Starting with compliance and audit. If you're in a highly regulated industry, or your business wants a very detailed trail of faxes, maybe that's for, if you're a SMB, that's for litigation or confirmation of simple fax that went to a customer. eFax Corporate has detailed metadata about each fax. You get a confirmation receipt, and it's really nice that you can easily search faxes and get a thumbnail or a miniaturized photo or screenshot of that fax, so you can find it, confirm it, and print it out or forward it or whatever you need to do with it. And then we mentioned during the webinar, in the highly regulated industries, financial, legal, for example, security can come into play, and we'll talk about that. But definitely having an audit trail to go back on for compliance is highly important to them. eFax Corporate can meet that need. From a scalability perspective, we gave you some use cases and real-world examples of corporations or large law firms that had issues managing infrastructure, and they turned to eFax Corporate to be the fax infrastructure experts, rather than trying to focus on solving for that. So if their volume peaks at end of month, they don't have to deal with, well, do we need another server? If there's a business where their particular volume is going down, are they trying to justify upgrades or continuing to have the IT overhead and the maintenance costs of maintaining that infrastructure on site? Or a hybrid model. Some fax services providers will provide. For them, it may not make sense, and it may make more sense to outsource that, but you want to partner with someone who has the global distribution that an eFax Corporate does. Gave a great use case or case study, if you will, when we spoke about the Legal Aid Society of New York and how we helped them continue, even in the most catastrophic of situation, to keep their business going as they restored their primary site and communications. eFax Corporate was there for them to keep them up and running. From a volume requirements perspective, you want a fax partner that can manage a huge spike in faxing, and whether that's a lot of inbound orders if you're a manufacturing or financial services firm, or an international law firm that's sending a lot of filings out at 2 in the morning. eFax Corporate's going to be there, and you're going to get a high uptime and have the peace of mind of knowing that they have that and continually invest in their infrastructure to provide 99.5% uptime, and we'll put that into their SLAs with you. From a security perspective, whether you're a small business, a mid-sized law firm of 100, or an international firm, your client's data these days is tantamount to your public reputation and the success that you have. And so when you're sending confidential information, whether that be PII or electronic protected health information, you want to partner with a firm that has the latest security protocols in place. eFax Corporate, I should mention, has TLS Encryption. Mentioned it earlier in the webinar, which is the highest encryption protocol for setting up a secure gateway to transmit faxes. And eFax Corporate, often used with eFax Secure, is the highest level of security that you can get out there with a cloud fax provider. So a lot of our partners in the highly regulated industries are very glad to have that upgraded TLS capability with AES 256-bit encryption of data that is stored on the cloud as well. And another reason to look at working with eFax Corporate is, how old's your infrastructure? Are you coming up on end of life and a decision point on making another investment? This might be a good time to have a discussion with eFax Corporate about what does it look like to sunset that. For some, it may make sense to continue on down that road of maintaining that. But when you look at it and look at the hard cost, you look at the IT overhead and the maintenance and kind of the headache of managing that infrastructure, a lot of firms are just very glad to partner with someone like eFax Corporate who can take that on for them. Another important part is where does it hurt? If there are pain points, let's say with respect to integration, you're looking for deeper integration or features that you're not getting currently. Sure, you can code and build and customize, and some firms or businesses need to be able to do that, but some simply don't have the resources. So if there's particular features that your business is looking for, let's say distribution group routing, let's say integration with multifunction printers or devices, those things are available with the best cloud fax providers, and those are things that can greatly enhance your integration and streamline the workflows, and frankly make your employees a lot happier because it can save them trips to the fax machine or MFPs and that and such. And then on the business model side, a great reason to work with eFax Corporate is we understand security and we understand compliance, and our success, as I mentioned earlier, is tantamount to the service levels we provide and the security we provide, and so those are things that are very important in the HIPAA world, in the GLBA world. Not only can we help you maintain high-level uptimes, but we can help you stay compliant. So that expertise is something you want. Anybody can say they'll sign a business associate agreement or help you keep client information confidential, but actions are more important than words. Will they sign a BAA? what infrastructure do they have in place. And then finally, what are the features that your organization requires? If you're larger, do you just want an API, an application interface, so that faxing can be integrated with your systems? That could be a CRM system. It could be an electronic medical record system. eFax Corporate has flexible solutions for CTOs, CIOs who are looking simply just to source that is electronic faxing. And leverage someone else's capability and expertise, and they can build that on their own. They can take an API and integrate into their own system. So that capability, along with SAP integration, is available as well. And then finally, financial considerations. When you look at cloud providers, what infrastructure investments have they made, and do they continue to make? What level of faxing do they manage? eFax Corporate, part of J2 Cloud Services, sends millions of faxes through its network every day and signs the agreements that we've talked about, so they will back up their business level agreements with performance. And that's also a very important component with a cloud fax partner. So a key differentiator just to mention about eFax Corporate is, I alluded to the fax infrastructure. So if you're a firm that is sending faxes worldwide, you have a partner you can trust. We have multiple locations distributed throughout the United States and footprint in Europe. And we have, as I mentioned earlier, geographically dispersed global network with Tier 3 and Tier 4 co-locations. So we have a very high uptime. And for the IT folk out there in the audience, we have high availability and fault tolerance for these locations. So if something does happen, you can have the peace of mind in knowing that another location can manage that workload. And then finally, I mentioned the TLS security encryption that can be enabled, both inbound and outbound, and data at rest can be encrypted as well. So you'll have a partner that is there for you, that has a proven infrastructure in place, and this is our core business. So eFax Corporate focuses on this network and the best experience for our customers. So in summary, moving any application or infrastructure to the cloud, in mind, you want to know that you're going to get at least equal or better value than keeping that infrastructure in-house. And moving cloud-based to a cloud-based faxing platform from an IT perspective or an infrastructure perspective can be done with no downtime. So you can port over existing numbers. You can sunset that infrastructure and free up your IT team to do forward-looking high return on investment projects. But also, as we gave you some use cases during the webinar, you really can automate some business processes. So the multifunction printers, you can integrate with those with eFax Corporate so that, let's say, on a procurement perspective, you have employees who need to fax wet ink signature documents. They can do that right from the glass with eFax Corporate MFP integration. From a investment perspective, you can free up your organization, whether it be a small business or an IT team of 10 people for an enterprise, from having to maintain that infrastructure and do the capacity planning and the upgrades, managing the telco lines, worrying about problems after migrating to VoIP. eFax Corporate is that solution for you. And then we also talked about productivity. employees are going to be receiving faxes directly. So from a compliance perspective, from a workflow perspective, that's going to make for happier employees. They're getting fax confirmations directly. Attorneys are getting notices or correspondence directly to their email. Finance companies are able to receive faxes and put them through distribution to, say, several loan officers who are approving loans. So there's a increased productivity and just satisfaction element to working with eFax Corporate. And then finally, with your customers, you're going to have faster turnaround times, whether that's in a healthcare environment where you can see more, you're a small practice and you can see more patients every day, or you're a law firm and you've got highly confidential information, you'll have that peace of mind in knowing that you're working with eFax Corporate, and that'll also result in happier clients as well. Okay, so we are, that's our presentation today. We'd like to segue into our Q&A session. So let's get started. We will start. Okay, our questions are coming in here. And our first question is from Arananth. Arananth is wanting to know, can you fax without having any fax device or MFP device, just through an eFax corporate account? He says that mostly we are sending faxes and receiving a few, and also wants to know if he will be getting a confirmation receipt. So multifaceted question, but good question, and the answer is yes. You absolutely, Arananth, can send from any internet-connected device, and that could be an iPhone. You could fax from, as we mentioned to earlier, with a multifunction printer from the glass directly. Oh, and yes, the confirmation receipt will come directly to you via email, so there's no need to walk to a fax machine or anything like that. This is as simple as sending or receiving an email with eFax Corporate. Great question. Wow, getting a lot of responses here. The next question is from Nadar, and he wants to know if we can integrate with the CRM application like SAP. So, yeah, absolutely. eFax Corporate is a certified partner, and we have integration with SAP via the eFax connector. And we'll be doing actually a webinar series in the fall about eFax and our multifunction printer integration. So look forward to those. That might be another one you might want to attend. And all right, our next question is from William, who says that he's a law firm with approximately 100 employees and does a lot of outbound fax. He wants to know if they have dedicated numbers for each location. I guess you have multiple locations. If we can get new numbers, or if we keep our fax servers in order to work with eFax Corporate. So good question. You can. It depends on your requirements, but you absolutely can keep your fax numbers. eFax Corporate can actually help you port those over, and you do not have a requirement to keep your existing fax servers or fax machines, and you can get a new number if you need it for any new employees, but simply enough, you can just port them all over, and we can help you with that process. And next question is from Elaine, and she says that she sends a lot of sensitive faxes and wants to know if we have an enhanced secure product for faxing outbound. Good question, Elaine. We have absolutely a solution for that. So eFax Secure may be a great option for you depending on what you need to do. There's other options as well. We can have someone from eFax Corporate reach out to you. You can also enable TLS, which if you're not on the tech side of the house, we can have someone explain to you or work with your operations or IT folks to figure that out. The next question comes from Richard. He says that he's a manufacturing firm, and for compliance purposes, we need an audit trail. Does eFax Corporate have this capability? So yes, Richard, we can help you with that. With the eFax Corporate administrative module, you'll have reporting available to you on the cloud. We alluded to in the webinar, but you'll have an admin console you can log into and get the status of faxes. You can set up users, basically a one-stop shop for managing all of your users. And it's also got a nice search feature so that, for compliance purposes, you'll have the metadata about each fax. You can find it. You can see a thumbnail view that I mentioned during the webinar for each fax so that you can pull it up and print it out if you need it or do what you need to do for compliance purposes, including find confirmation receipts. So it's real simple and easy to use. Next question comes from Mark. Mark says that we're a law firm that receives a lot of inbound faxes and wants to know if they can use Active Directory to authenticate users and route them accordingly. Right now, everything comes into a single location. So depending on what you're trying to accomplish, Mark, you can integrate eFax Corporate with Active Directory to manage your users. You'll just need an eFax account for each of those users, and then you can set them up. You can set that up, as I mentioned earlier, with the admin module. Another nice feature is the multi-function printer integration for these faxes. If requiring wet ink signatures, someone could step up to an MFP and fax directly from there. Of course, that would have to be set up by yourself, but if you're using Active Directory, it is an option if you want to do that. Okay, great response here. Our next question is from Jennifer, and she's asking, we have a lot of employees who travel or are remote. What does the mobile application cost? So great news, Jennifer. The mobile application is free as long as you have an eFax corporate account for those users. And didn't speak much about the support during the webinar, but that can be any mobile device, internet-connected device, tablet, iPad, Android platform. Absolutely, you can fax from those. And we're just about out of time here. We'll take one more question. The next question is from Matthew, who says he's an enterprise firm. His firm is an enterprise firm, and they'd like an API for faxing. Can you provide us with this? Yes, absolutely, Matthew. We have an API, and we can have someone reach out to you to discuss the implementation of what you're trying to accomplish. But yeah, so the firms that have the resources and that want to implement an API, we absolutely have it and can help you out with that. We'll have someone from eFax Corporate reach out to you. So, okay, we are just about out of time here. I think that'll do it for us. We're going to put a wrap on this, but thank you so much for attending today. If we weren't able to get to your question, we'll have someone from eFax Corporate reach out to you. Thank you again for the great response and attending today, and we hope this webinar was informative and enlightening for you. Thanks so much.